Next, we would like to have Fireside Chat with Professor HIDEYUKI OKANO, President of the Japanese Society for Regenerative Medicine, founding scientist and director, CSO, K-Pharma Inc., Professor, Keio University, and Director, Keio University Regenerative Medicine Research Center. And Dr. DAISAKU SATO, Councilor for Pharmaceutical Affairs, Deputy Director General, Minister's Secretariat, Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare, will discuss the approach to clinical trials and approvals. The moderator will be Mr. Kiyoshi Ando, Senior Staff Writer, Nikkei Inc. Please come to the stage. Now, Dr. Ando, please have the floor.
Thank you very much for joining this session. My name is Ando from Nikkei, serving as the moderator today. We have Councilor DAISAKU SATO from MHLW, and we have President of the Japanese Society for Regenerative Medicine and the founder of K-Pharma, Professor HIDEYUKI OKANO. And with these speakers, we would like to discuss how to promote regenerative medicine. Before we begin, we have concise presentations from the two speakers. And first of all, I would like to invite Councilor Sato to talk about the regulation and approval process. What is the uniqueness of Japan? I would like to invite Councilor Sato first. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. My name is Sato, Councilor for Pharmaceutical Affairs of MHLW. Thank you very much for inviting me to this event. First of all, I will talk about the review and approval process and also the clinical trial and the current status of the regenerative medical products. I'm showing this slide, and this is related to regenerative medical products in English. And with respect to the definition, Pharmaceutical Medical Device Act. This is the definition under this act. Cellular and tissue-based products and gene therapy products. We have two different categories under one definition according to the Pharmaceutical Affairs and the Medical Device Act. The minister earlier spoke about the Act on Safety of Regenerative Medicine, and this is related to the medical side, and this Pharmaceutical Device Act is related to the regulation and also licensing of the actual products. As to the operation, in 2012, we had various discussions, and in 2013, major revision was made on the Pharmaceuticals and Medical Devices Act. The actual enforcement was in 2014, and as of today, 10 years have passed. For this major revision, as you can see on this slide, there was iPS cell utilization discovered by Professor Shinya Yamanaka, but the basic concept is that the cutting-edge regenerative medicine technology should become accessible to the general public as soon as possible. This was the major concept at the time of the revision of this act. This concept, in order to materialize that, what we employed as a mechanism in this Pharmaceuticals and Medical Devices Act was the conditional time-limited marketing authorization. And in the normal pathway to go through the approval process, the phase 3 confirmatory clinical trial should be conducted. But what was new about this mechanism was that conditional time-limited marketing authorization is based on the exploratory clinical trial, and the efficacy, if that is estimated or predict likely efficacy and confirmed safety, it says on the slide. And under such circumstances, the approval can be granted and to become accessible at an earlier stage to the patients. After the revision of the Act from 2014, this Act is enforced, and under such circumstances, this system itself is attracting much attention. And in the domestic market, the number of clinical trials dramatically increased from 2014 and currently maintaining that level. And if I speak from the perspective of Japan in terms of the uniqueness and in terms of the indications, oncology is quite low, 30% of the total, and the treatment for the other diseases are accounting for above 60%. That is the characteristic. Also, in Japan, especially with respect to the change and the pre and post change of the regenerative medicine, the seeds development in academia is developing. The government, including AMED, the public grant, is becoming quite sizable in terms of the amount of investment, especially in PMDA. The consultation to enter into clinical trial, we saw increasing number there, and that number is retained at the moment. For the development of regenerative medicine, there is high level of interest, including academia. The status is continuing. Now, turning to the review side, in the review, there is prioritization of the pathway, and in a short period of time, the mechanism is in place to expedite the process that is already established from the PMDA side. As you can see on this slide, this shows the difference compared to the overseas in terms of the application and filing, and including the products from overseas. The number of approval for the regenerative medicine in Japan is steadily increasing. Having said that, as I mentioned earlier, as the characteristic for the clinical trial, the product range for the regenerative medicine products that are approved in Japan, CAR-T is relatively low compared to overseas. Although the number is increasing, it is still only accounting for 30% of the total. As you can see on this page, currently 19 products under Pharmaceutical Affairs and Medical Devices Act, these are approved. And out of that, 16 products are cellular and tissue-based products. That is the current status. And if we change the colors, this shows by indication. And in summary, this is the situation as the characteristics of Japan. Somatic cell-derived products and somatic stem cell-derived products are relatively large in number in terms of the approved products, especially in dermatology and also in ophthalmology and cornea. Those are quite high, as you can see here. And there are also criticism against a Japanese conditional approval system. Before going through the confirmatory clinical trial, the approval is granted, and as a result of that, there may be more burden on the part of the patients. While there is uncertainty over the efficacy, the cost has to be borne by the patients. There were such criticism, but under the Japanese insurance scheme, the insurance was covered, and this was basically being considerate of the patients to have more access. So under this conditional approval, these are the 5 products which have been granted with the approval. Hardsheet and Colatagene, these 2 products were conditional, and they had a deadline, but they have reached that deadline. And for the actual approval, the review took place. Unfortunately, after granted with the conditional approval, the data was collected and went through the review, but for hard sheet, approval was considered not to be appropriate, and that was the conclusion from the Pharmaceutical Affairs Council. With respect to colatigen, the filing was withdrawn, and there was the expiration of the approval. There could be criticism over these failures, but the treatment options for promising regenerative medicine, although it is still closer to the research and development stage, to offer more access to patients, I believe was valuable as a scheme. But unfortunately, the efficacy was not confirmed in the actual approval process. But I think this was a good process. But with respect to this conditional approval scheme, with respect to the efficacy evaluation, there are opinions supporting more stringent criteria. What kind of items should become the subject for the conditional approval? With respect to the clinical trials, guidance was issued this March, and there is more clarification of the subject products. And as an improvement for the system, we are dealing with these issues. So under such circumstances, this conditional approval, in order to utilize this scheme, it is not the end of the process. Normally, after the approval is granted, the sponsors are exhausted through the process. But that should not be the case. The development is continuing. And the evidence collection for proving the efficacy should be more efficient, and it should be valuable from the scientific perspective. That is very important. If it is not feasible within Japan, the trial should be conducted in overseas. So this is the purpose of this slide. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you much, Dr. Sato, Councilor of MHLW. Now, Professor Okano, as a researcher who has been engaged in the regenerative medicine research and also application into the clinical setting and also the development. And I think also you have been serving as the user in this field as well. So from your perspective as a user, what are the challenges or excellent points of the current Japanese system? Could you please share with us your perspectives? Yes, thank you very much. And again, thank you very much for giving me this wonderful opportunity. Mr. Ando of Nikkei Inc. and also other relevant parties, I would like to express my appreciation. I wondered from what stance or position I should speak today, but based upon these three logos, Keio University, JSRM, and ICCRM, and ISSCR, and from all these perspectives, I would like to speak. And if there is any confusion, I would like to clarify from which standpoint I'm speaking. So regarding the regenerative medicine in Japan, I would like to talk about today. As has been mentioned by Dr. Sato earlier, the Japanese regenerative medicine related acts was enacted in November 25th of 2014. And the PMD Act with the conditional time limited approval system was introduced, and the regenerative medicine products were now to be approved under this new system. This was the epoch-making reform, an innovative flow in my perspective. And according to the Congress meetings held overseas, there were sessions which featured on the PMD Act in Japan. So there are various opinions exchanged on that part as well. And recently, the presidential election was held in Taiwan, and the president is MD. And immediately after taking a position, and then the very quite similar PMD Act in Japan was emulated in Taiwan as well. And in South Korea as well, actually very strict process for getting approval. But for the regenerative medicine, there is going to be the exchange of opinion with PMDA, with the counterpart in South Korea next month. So this system has gained a lot of attention. On the other hand, when it comes to the clinical research and clinical practice, there is a new law called the Safety Act on the Safety of Regenerative Medicine, and based upon only the guideline specializing in the clinical research utilizing the stem cells or other regenerative materials like cells and tissues. But there was only the guidelines to the effect. However, there was a new act, and also at the clinics and regenerative medicine, the practice or treatment not covered by the NHI system. And this is based upon a notification system. How we are able to improve these systems is also the challenge going forward. This is my own perspective. Although this is not covered in the NHI, but there needs to be some kind of mechanism for evaluating the safety and efficacy. This is what we'd like to see. And this is the mechanism, as we have heard earlier. This is the conditional term limited authorization, early approval, based upon the confirmation of the safety and the presumption of the efficacy, based upon which PMDA will make a recommendation to the MHLW. And based upon that, this determination to be covered by the national health insurance is also determined within one certain period, and the post-marketing process will be conducted, and then the full approval may be gained. So this accelerates the processes for getting the products to be approved, and this has gained a lot of attention in the world. And in 2023, there are one or two products missing from compared to the Dr. Sato's presentation. So these are the products approved as of 2023. And cell and tissue-based products, CAR-Ts, accounted for the majority. And also the human somatic stem cell derived on the ocular surface dysfunction, somatic cells were the main products that have been approved for these indications. And other than that, HeartSheet and Stimulac were approved as well. And for gene therapy products, plasmid vector-based products, Collatigene. And this is not the conditional or time-limited approval products, but this was done by the SMA or lethal disease by Novartis, and there was no other option for treatment, and the causal gene was to be transduced. AV vector was developed by Novartis for lethal disease, and academically and scientifically excellent one, malignant glioma. Oncolytic virus was introduced. Dr. Todo of Tokyo University of Tokyo's Medical Institute developed this, and that was developed and manufactured by DAISAKU, and this has been approved. So relatively speaking, simpler methods and also molecular and biological essence, quintessence, has been mixed together in this current status of the development. At this stage, having said that, PMD Act, immediately after the PMD Act was enacted and the products approved after the revision, perhaps the development should have started over 15 years ago. Therefore, there may be some obsolete technologies, viral vectors, and capsid. What about the capsid? And how about the genome editing? And CRISPR-Cas9 should not be used in editing ex vivo gene therapy. And also trophic action, not only trophic action, but also the according to the disease types, the tissues lost needs to be replaced and functionally integrated with the existing tissues. And the second generation gene and cell therapies are starting from the basic research and now getting into the clinical stage. So we expect that these will be launched one after another, and I believe that this is the crucial moment for Japanese players to be competitive. And at such time, we needed to utilize in a better way this current the early approval system in order to launch this product and offer it to the patients around the world. And as of 2020, Professor Yamanaka has prepared the material from which I borrowed this page and utilizing pluripotent stem cells for clinical application. When I say clinical application, this includes the clinical research and clinical trial and the products. I know that these have not become products yet, but there is a mixture of various things. ESCs, for example, for these indications, these were being developed. But in Japan, actually, the clinical research utilizing ES cells for the genetic hepatic disease is being conducted by the Child Health and Development Center. And for iPSCs, around 10 out of 10 and 9 indications, the first-in-human trials have already conducted, and this worthwhile paying attention to, as Minister Takemi introduced spinal cord injury and the iPSC therapy. First-in-human, that's good, but not ending there. And actually, after getting approval for these, and then the hope that these will become the blockbuster therapies. And if we can do that, this is very promising for Japan as a whole. And in order to achieve that, what kind of programs and policy need to be in place, and what about the investment to be made? And going forward in the regenerative medicine, for further advancement to be seen, what are the challenges we have to overcome as important points? Of course, the stem cell research and genomics, and also furthermore, fundamental analysis needs to be introduced in these areas. So far, there are areas where we have not done, and the environment-dependent epigenetics changes and also aging-related epigenetic changes, how we are able to improve or reverse such trend. So far, we have not seen advanced experiments, so we are just conducting rudimentary experiments. We need to accommodate this. And also the tissue engineering, utilizing engineering technologies in wide area. Well, genomics, I thought that the genomics should have been inserted here, and including the genomics, tissue engineering needs to be developed. Not only the CRISPR-Cas9, but also not only the licensing issues, but the genomic editing, not utilizing the CRISPR-Cas-based editing and and how we are able to lessen the enzyme and how we are able to insert them into the AV. And these are crucial. And later, I will discuss this later, but such products, not only writing academic papers, or rather testing in the several cases in first-in-human, but targeting the millions of the patients or target subjects. The mass production needs to be established, particularly for the gene therapies. The safety and efficacy have to be confirmed. Therefore, there needs to be new vector system. And also for such genetic technology to be incorporated into the designer's cell. These have to be established. In 2007, iPS cells were developed, and then after that, Nobel laureates were awarded, and there's so DNA and also RNA utilized for transduction. And organoid technology, single-cell RNA-seq, and optogenetics and AI, which are expected to be the targets of the Nobel laureates. And these have to be combined for advancement going forward. At least Japan has to be engaged, or rather Japan needs to continue to play a central role in developing. And then in order to accelerate this process, I believe that this current system of the conditional and time-limited approval system is here. So how we're able to put them into the practice, large-scale manipulation system is necessary. It's not only creating the large-scale tanks, 10 cc culture, and once we see excellent success, but we're not successful in the large-scale manufacturing. Of course, stem cells needs to be self-replicating, and then, of course, the same quality cells cannot be reproduced in the large tanks. So how can we overcome this issue? The stem cell, the self-replicating capability needs to be controlled in a well manner, and a mass culture shall be done. And then how we can reduce the manufacturing costs and how to transport them, and the cryopreservation should be considered. Cryo, we don't have to attach cryo, but how can we store such manufactured cells? That is also issue. And stable cell supply system has to be also developed. It is very important. Unfortunately, Kimuria, which is an excellent product, getting T cells from the patient and sent to the US, and the vector was introduced, and once the product is failure, and then free of charge to be supplied. Well, it's not the case. Well, off the shelf, the allogenic CAR-T therapy utilizing the iPS cells needs to be used to be developed. I believe that such approach will be very important. Quality and safety should be, quality, safety, and availability have to be secured going forward. And that is the crucial points in order to get the survival in the regenerative medicine area. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
岡野先生、ありがとうございます。
Professor Okano, thank you very much indeed. Allow me to ask you some questions and proceed in the discussion. First, Councilor Sato, you talked about the conditional on term limited approval system. This is a very good system for Japan's system. And when the system was established in the period of 10 years, we thought that our unique technology of Japan using iPS in the regenerative product, there will be a number of products which will file for submission, and some of them, one or two products, will transfer into the full approval. We thought that would be the timing of the approval of regenerative medicine. So prior to other companies, we thought that the Japan-born regenerative medicine can be used. So there was a slogan that regenerative medicine should be like a normal therapy. There was such kind of slogan issued by the Japan Regenerative Medicine Society. Given this tone, it seems it's a big challenge. Councilor Sato was in PMDA, you know, in and out of this world really well. But what were the bottleneck? Is it a technological thing, or the system was created correctly, and with trials and errors, the system is to be changed, but in the middle of that change process, should we understand the situation in that way? As was mentioned by Professor Okano's in his presentation, things that come to the discussion for the PMDA, usually those projects have gone through 10 to 15 years of development, and then they come to the PMDA's discussion. And that system, our system, started 10 years ago, and iPS technology or clinical application technology actually started about 10 years ago concretely, or around that period. So in that regard, looking at the time horizon of development, the development in Japan are not so lagging behind. Most of them are in first-in-man stage and moving into a next stage now. So given this, it may look as if the progress is a little slow, but looking at the time horizon, what's happening now is as we expected. However, when it comes to these cells, we need to establish the commercial manufacturing skills. And we also need to think about how we conduct assessment clinically. And this has some challenges. So given those things, I don't think we are far behind.
Thank you, Dr. Okano. Although not lagging behind so much, the patients would like to receive as soon as possible, and even the government even voice that it is too late from time to time. But are we in rush? Technically speaking, since you are engaged in research, earlier you mentioned that the first in human is quite much in number, but with just one step ahead, are they close to review and approval process? But are they going to stop? Are we having brighter future? Well, in the Council for Regenerative Medicine, we're just looking at type 1, but I don't see something that is so peculiar. If they are all approved, that's going to be quite significant as I listen to them. But from the finance perspective, that is another issue. That is something that would require to have various types of ecosystems. To that end, of course, many of them do derive from university hospitals, and they receive the grants from AMED to conduct clinical research, but some of them are not at all interested in the entrepreneurship. So we are planning to have some kind of remedy scheme. We have a university and also School of Medicine, a venture capital council, and that's something that we need to discuss. But there are countries which have even larger and greater funding mechanisms than Japan. For example, we have people from 8 Rows, so we hope that the advanced regenerative medicine should be introduced from Japan. And because of COVID, we had closed market, and this is something that we need to reflect.
Thank you very much. Earlier, Professor Okano mentioned that not only the iPS cell therapies, but utilizing genome editing therapies. And going forward, that there will be more and more new modality-based therapies. In such areas, Japanese players have some capabilities and competitiveness. Dr. Sato, Councilor, with the advent of new modalities coming up, one after another, and at PMDA and or at the MHLW, for such new technologies, we heard that there were some obsolete technologies because of the long development from 10 or 15 years ago. But with that, there has been new systems and regulations put in place. But with the expectation that there will be further acceleration of the new technologies or modalities, do you think that you are prepared or systems are prepared well enough? Thank you very much for your question. As Mr. Ando mentioned, we have a term, horizon scanning, with the advent of new modalities and technologies, how we can well prepare in advance by accumulating a knowledge in order to prepare for the review process. From that perspective, the AMED, they are supporting projects, and we are sharing information with AMED for the project they are supporting, and we are learning from that process. And researchers from early stage in the development, they come to PMDA for consultation. So together with them, we are able to think about how the regulatory affairs process should be at the scientific council meetings, and there are some issues discussed related to the scientific technologies, and discussing with the researchers in order to come up with solutions to overcome some potential challenges. At regulatory authorities, maybe refining or honing the swords. And in order to refine and hone the swords, in order to prepare ourselves for the advent of the new technologies and modalities, and we are collaborating with researchers in order to respond to this situation.
ちなみに今例えば
Now, in regenerative medicine and gene therapy or genome editing, those officers who are able to review those projects, what is the number of those officers or reviewer? In the regenerative medicine area, including the gene therapy or biomedicine, we have 35 or 36 people. In comparison to this time we started, the number of those staff has been more than doubled, and they are from research. We have recruited them. So moving forward, we are going to enhance the review process further. As Minister Takemi mentioned earlier, in order to respond to the drug discovery ecosystem, as for the formation of the team that provide early support, we would like to ask for budget in next fiscal year so that we are able to beef up the review system in that area as well.
Professor Okano, from the user's perspective, earlier you mentioned about the increasing number of people who will consult with the PMDA, and the number of staff is increasing. But from the development side, is it now easy to work with? Yes, I agree with your point. Personally, I worked in the science committee at PMDA for 2 years also, and I had extensive exchange of opinion, and the discussion at such exchange of opinions are dependent and involved on the discussion of the reviewers. So in that sense, they are studying novel technologies, and this is being penetrated at a relatively fast speed. On the other hand, going forward, once we see different applications, what is the level of manpower required and speed, we also need to have the similar kind of quality reviewers, just like in the area of stem cells. This is very critical. So from that background, the higher education in the universities will be extremely important. That is an area we need to emphasize. Still, those people who do review, I never scolded that they did not understand. Well, sometimes I felt that they are too rigid, but the style is different. So we need to have a higher logic to overcome the situation. And I think we are growing as a result of that.
Professor Okano, ISSCR, you are going to be you are the president-elect of ISSCR, and therefore you are very versed in what is happening outside of Japan. In global market, this kind of clinical application or practical use of regenerative medicine products and support for R&D, and compared to the current status in Japan, when I say the global, it's very broad. So, for example, take the U.S. as a model, and you are also doing business in a company called K-Pharma. Do you think that the U.S. is also easier for developing the new technology or modalities when compared to Japan? Right. The sales of pharmaceutical products in Japan accounted for 15%, but now it's only 6% or so. But in the United States, the sales of pharmaceutical products account for half or 45% or so. So when it comes to the market size, and I think that we would like to establish businesses in the United States and also Europe, EU. we would like to continue efforts to get approvals in various markets. What did you ask? The current status of development? What about the support for R&D? And also speed of commercialization of products after getting approval and the environment for doing such business compared to Japanese environment. How do you think? This summer, I spent for 3 weeks in Boston and went to San Francisco. So maybe these are not a typical situation, but the government support is not relevant. They are utilizing their own funding and they are trying to get a lot of excellent talents. Having so many excellent talents and also putting a lot of energy into the development of very minor technologies in order to differentiate them from other companies with competitive advantage. That's what I thought. We cannot see that in the publication. Such excellent and talented people have been doing such a work. I was thrilled to find that such excellent and good performers are putting a lot of energy in order to provide good products to patients. ISP is really important. I think that large corporations in Japan are able to do that. For example, anti-cancer agents and Alzheimer's disease products or treatments are being developed nowadays. So having said that, the capability of drug discovery in Japan is deteriorating, but still some players are doing very well as a core, and I hope that these will become larger, centering on them. So in that sense, the startup companies needs to be more stronger and excellent the talents have to gather at the startups for better work there. That is, I believe it is very important. Dr. Sato, in the last page of the slide deck earlier, if it is difficult to develop in Japan, so you should consider developing outside of Japan. Could you please supplement your comment there?
Thank you very much. As for conditional and term-limited approval system, the intent of this system is for Japanese people's healthcare. There are certain medication or technology required, and even if it's a new technology, we want to accelerate the access to those new therapy to people in Japan. That is the intent of this system. So conditional and term-limited approval system for regenerative medicine, we seem to have many applications originated in Japan. Having said that, there is no differentiation whether some of them are from Japan or from overseas. This approval system applies to technology or medication originated in overseas as well. So if they are conducive to people in Japan, they can use this system and they can make entry into Japan. That is important. So non-Japanese can also utilize this system. And for those patients in Japan, with the condition that they are able to expect efficacy, access could be provided. And if they are from overseas, so phase 3 clinical study can be done as a global study involving overseas as well. So such kind of option is also feasible. And if things are approved, up to conditional approval is done in Japan, but beyond that, global study can be done to verify beyond the study which has been conducted up to Japan. So at any rate, we want to accelerate the access to promising therapy by Japanese people. In that regard, we should think that this system can be utilized.
I may be digressing a little bit, but the global study is rather difficult to achieve in Japan, especially Japanese companies may have the difficulty in joining the global studies, which are mainly promoted by the overseas companies. And what do you think is the difficulty which lies in this process? Is this a question to me? Oftentimes, President Fujiwara of PMDA mentions this, but the English capability in Japanese institutions is one of the challenges. It is not that the clinical trial sites in Japan have high cost. I don't think that is the situation. At one time, it was mentioned in that manner, but it is not the case. Through partnership with the overseas, it is possible to work together. So the strength from the medical institution side is one of the challenges.
Thank you very much, Professor Okano. Do you agree? Yes, well, the points raised by Chief Executive PMDA, Dr. Fujiwara, is really helpful and valuable in South Korea, at very close to the Incheon International Airport for inbound tourists, and English studies are conducted. And recently, Fujita Medical Health University established close to the Haneda Airport. We can utilize those sites for such endeavors. Professor Okano, in order to put regenerative medicine products into clinical application, the manufacturing technologies were mentioned for mass production with the same quality level. I think this is totally different from the situation where you are producing only a small batch. Are there any solutions? Without them, I don't think that the full approval is difficult to be obtained. So how can we find a solution? We are not just simply saying that we needed to hire 100 people rather than 50. The automatic and closed system for culture, technical innovation in those areas have to be found. So that is the bottleneck in various areas. And now there are various steps being taken in order to produce good ones, whether we are able to industrialize them, and all sorts of CDMOs are able to adopt such technology to become the global standards. And I hope that this will be the case. So I am not able to give you any specific names of the companies, but I hope that they will do well. So when I was engaged in the review process, I would like to give you my feedback. At the bench level or academia's research level, when they are producing things like cells or tissues, when it comes to the commercialization and utilizing various grades of the culture media and also reagents, it's not about the experimental reagent. Those appropriate for the review process and also commercial production, the culture media, and also serum as well. And such quality media or the serum needs to be procured, and that is very difficult, and because of the cost issue, and then there may be a shortage of the funding. Therefore, companies are not able to go ahead anymore. So at the time of the development, you can't be stingy. You have to procure necessary materials and get a stable supply of such materials necessary, and getting the enough funding for that. There needs to be mechanisms allowing such efforts by companies. In order to realize that, for investors, as regards to the actual mass production technology, I hope that the investors will have the understanding of those technologies understood very well. Even if you say that we can't be stingy, but nobody wants to be stingy. Maybe they do not have enough money, actually. So even at the research level, and you are getting the grants from the government, and however, when it comes to the actual application, and then they have a shortage of the funding, they would like to continue to invest, but they are not able to do that. So how Japan can provide enough funding, or do you think it is still difficult?
Dr. Okano, This is not only the issue in Japan, but also in California or in various parts in the U.S. Ventures. We see the similar things. They were doing really well in project, but because of the lack of funding, they went past. I hear about such things. So if they have a good technology at early on, the investment should be conducted or through M&A. They should work with a bigger company. Such a path should be available. And many people, I think, need to show that path, serving as role model. For example, this is a known thing. Douglas Melton in Harvard, the type 1 diabetes regenerative medicine research was done by him, and he created a venture. And the venture was acquired by a bigger company, and now it's Veltex. So they have a gigantic building in Boston Harbor, about 30-story building, exclusive for Veltec, was built, and they're doing clinical research one after another. I was very shocked to see that. So when you have a very excellent technology, there could be other who would support you. So to acquire technical advantage is very important. So as for venture, as an example, for venture becoming a big company, like Biogen or Genentech or Amgen, there are such companies. In the U.S., there are extremely rare cases. So we should be aware that there are a variety of possibilities, and those who are able to consultation to those ventures should increase. My role is not to provide consultation, but it will be good if there are many consultants who can provide such consultation to them.
Maybe not so many companies are at the level of Genentech, but the scale of investment is different in the order compared with Japan. Even if we ask for investors in Japan, we need to be more aggressive to go to the overseas market. Japanese researchers, they lack the capacity to sell Japan to the overseas market. I think both speakers mentioned that Japan has good products. Do you think that we lack the capability to sell, or are we not competent enough amongst the promising talent in overseas? Can we ask Professor Okano? With overseas investors and with mega pharmas in Japan, when we speak, they're astonished with our products. In some cases, we have good progress in our negotiation. The Japanese researchers should go outside of Japan more, and ISSCR is quite difficult, but I joined the management to introduce more of the technologies of Japan. So we have good products, and to investors in overseas and mega pharmas, we want to make sure that they do come to have that information in their knowledge. This is what we are trying to achieve.
Thank you very much. In that sense, as from the perspective of the regulatory authorities, we have many excellent technologies, but they are stuck, not being able to advance. We have to avoid such a situation. Medically and economically, this will pose a huge loss to Japan as a whole. And such companies' opportunity to be exposed to overseas markets. As a regulatory authorities, what can we do to help the situation to be improved? It's quite challenging and difficult. Recently, at PMDA, Washington office is being established by PMDA, or having an office in Thailand as an Asian office. So regulatory agencies' development is being done overseas. It's not only about the matching opportunities, but the system in Japan can be introduced to overseas markets. So that's why they have established the offices overseas. By increasing the understanding level of the Japanese systems, and those investors as well as those who are engaged in the development overseas will be will get more interested in the development in Japanese market as well. So that we are thinking about. So for the investors and developers outside of Japan, I hope they will get interested more in the products in Japan. Thank you.
Thank you. We still have some time. So if you have questions from the floor, we would like to receive 1 or 2 questions. You can ask questions to anyone. Any questions from the floor?
There
could be people who may have some discontent. Feel free to ask any questions. Any questions? No questions. So lastly, to both of you, I have a question. It's not that we can take time and develop good things. Now is a time that speed is very important. Yes, it is true it takes 10 to 20 years to develop a product, but the advancement of technology is very fast, and in an unexpected manner, products become available in overseas. Against this backdrop, how Japan can leverage Japan's unique technology and make them into product. What are the essential things for Japan? I would like to hear both of you, your views on this point. So from basic research to clinical application, it has taken such a long time in our group. In my life, this has played a very important role in my life. But moving forward, we should not be complacent with this speed. But why did it take such a long time? I realize the reason for that, and we have to avoid such a situation from happening again. Rules and regulations can be interpreted flexibly by talking with various people. And as for the Safety of Regenerative Medicine Act, which are revised after 3 to 5 years. So bearing in mind what we have to do for the sake of patients, I conduct my research, and depending on the situation, on the regulations and rules, I would like to discuss with regulatory authorities about those rules and regulations. Thank you very much.
So, as I mentioned at the outset, based on the PMD Act, there is a conditional and a time-limited approval scheme for the regenerative medicine products. Originally, more than 10 years ago, spearheaded by Professor Okano, we received a request from the academia, including the Regenerative Medicine Society. So from that perspective, what was discovered as the seeds from academia, they should be delivered to the clinical sites at a faster pace. In the past, we have the track record of 5 products in the past 10 years. I think it was useful in a sense to a certain extent. But including the gene therapy for the regenerative medicine products, they are still in the process of development, according to our understanding. At the initial stage, in many aspects, are not strong enough in terms of the efficacy. But going forward, IPS and others will be utilized, and we believe that more efficacious products will be launched in the market as we expected when we devised the scheme, and we should have a faster turnover. That is also critical. The mechanism of pharmaceutical affairs in Japan, there will be patent expiry, and even after that, there will be long listed products, and that did exist in Japan, but that should not be the case. In area of technology with a faster turnover, there are new products one after another, and compared to what has existed in the past, and if there is something inferior, they should fade out faster. So from that perspective, this conditional and time-limited approval or scheme will help to develop the technology and to be accessible to patients at a faster pace. And we hope that you will do the development from that perspective, from the regulator's perspective. Thank you very much.
Dr. Sato and Dr. Okano, thank you very much. With this, I'd like to conclude this session. Please give all the speakers a big round of applause. Thank you very much. Professor Okano and Dr. Sato, thank you very much. For Mr. Ando, he is going to continue to serve as the moderator in the later session as well. Thank you.
Now, I would like to introduce Hesta Okura, who is serving as the sponsor for this event. Hesta Okura is working on various types of real estate development, but one of them include home-based health management and telemedicine, which is smart home business. For those of you who are joining, you will find Nikkei, a publication inside your bag, which was distributed at the reception. Another new business is just a newly started Hesta Solar. They are completely removing the common sense of the solar battery panel in the past. This is thin and light and bendable solar panel. We have received a significant number of inquiries, and we have a TV commercial from this week, and we would like to show you the preview.
耐震性のこと考えていますか？ヘスタソーラーはこれまでの太陽光パネルに比べて
軽い。だからお家の耐震性を損なわない。さらに
薄い。だから壁にも設置できる。そして
曲がる。だからいろんな屋根に貼れる。
だから世界中の屋根と壁にヘスタソーラー。
皆様に一足先。
So this was the preview ahead of the public. The actual product is exhibited at the entrance of this hall, so please do feel the thinness and lightness of the product. They can be installed anywhere at hospitals, plants, and office buildings. Furthermore, this event is also sponsored by Cantor Fitzgerald, the global financial group, and the drug discovery company Roche. Now, we would like to have 10 minutes break. The restrooms are to your right, from the central door of this room. We would like to resume from 3 to have the presentations from the leading Japanese regenerative medicine and drug discovery venture companies.